Hey, today I'm going to talk about what is normal for bleeding when you have your period, and what qualifies as heavy bleeding, how much is too much, and what do we do about it. So, my name is Alyssa Cohen. I am a functional diagnostic health coach. So that means I use health coaching and I use functional lab testing to help women who struggle with irregular periods, weight they can't seem to lose, fatigue, and digestive issues, and I help them get to the root cause of their symptoms so that they can live the most wonderful life that they're meant to live. So, heavy bleeding is actually something that I've struggled with for a long time, and it was actually the reason that I got on birth control in the first place. When I was in college, I really struggled with this, and because I swam in college, it was even more of an issue. So like every time my period came, I was like, oh my god, I'd have to get out of the pool in the middle of practice to go change the tampon so that by the time I was done with practice, it wouldn't be like running down my leg, which half of the time it would be anyway. And it was just miserable. And my period was once I got off birth control. When I did that, I don't know, 5 years ago or so, and I finally got my period back 2.5 years later. Lo and behold, I still had heavy bleeding. You know, the birth control really didn't fix anything. It really just kind of covered it up and made some aspects worse. And so it was still something that I had to address and still have to address. I'm still working on with getting a little bit more regular periods and or hormonal balance. So there's actually, when I first got my period back, there was a time I had family over for dinner. I think it was Christmas, and I stood up from my chair. Fortunately, we were at my own house, and I was wearing black pants, but the pad on, like, the cushion on the chair was completely soaked. I had no idea. I was using a tampon and a pad. I had no idea that I was bleeding through my clothes, and it was, I mean, at least it was just my close family, but it was super embarrassing still, and it sucked, and I'm like, God, how do I get to the bottom of this, and how I can't deal with this anymore. So, and so, some months are still bad. Some months I still have heavier flow. I can tell when I'm stressed and my hormonal balance is not what it should be, and it's something that I continue to work on as I balance life stressors and things like that. But so let's talk about what is normal, what is considered heavy flow, and what might be causing the heavy flow if that is something that you're struggling with. So, according to research, normal flow is between 10 and 35 milliliters of blood, which is really difficult to quantify. Like, what does that mean? So, a regular size sanitary product, so a pad or tampon, regular size, is holds 5 milliliters of blood. So, filling 1 to 7 regular size tampons or pads per period is normal. When we have heavy blood flow, it's termed menorrhagia. Menorrhagia, I guess I would say it, is like the clinical diagnosis, and it's quantified as more than 80 milliliters of blood loss per period, which would be like 16 regular sanitary products. So, and it's more common to have heavier flow when you're a teenager, like you're just starting your period, or when you're in that perimenopausal phase when your period is tapering off and going away, because we have more hormonal fluctuation there. So progesterone levels are tending to lower, especially in perimenopause, and things are going up and down, and so it's a little bit easier to have that hormonal imbalance that's going to contribute to the heavy bleeding. But how do you know if you have heavy flow? What does that look like? How do we quantify it? What do we do? So the first thing to do is start noticing and maybe tracking. So we can do this by noticing the number of sanitary products that we use in a day or throughout our whole cycle. So if you fill 1 regular size sanitary product, that's 1. If you maybe if you half fill 4 regular size sanitary products in one period, you know, you'd take those 4 and divide it by 2 because you're halfway filling it, and that would be 2. If you are using Super or Super Plus products, we would those hold 10 milliliters, so that would count as 2 regular size sanitary products. So we just kind of add them up through our cycle and see how many we're at, and see if we're up into that 12 to 16 range, that's abnormal. Also, very heavy blood flow or blood loss would be we would consider that if we're having clots that are greater than the size of a quarter. So, let's see. So what can cause this? One of the things that can cause this is hormonal imbalance. So having too much estrogen as compared to progesterone can cause heavy flow, along with symptoms like breast tenderness, stubborn weight gain, acne, PMS, and migraines. Another thing that can contribute to this is low thyroid function, hypothyroidism. When we have low thyroid function, this can be closely linked to low progesterone levels. And also when our thyroid is not functioning very well, our liver might not be functioning very well. Our liver might not be detoxifying as well as it should be, or as quickly as it should be. And so then we have a hard time getting rid of the estrogen, and so we can end up with extra estrogen in our body. So we might have lower progesterone, excess estrogen, and so that estrogen dominance, that higher level of estrogen compared to progesterone, can cause the heavy bleeding. Some other things that can contribute would be endometriosis, fibroids in the uterus, polyps, and miscarriage, as well as certain bleeding disorders and pelvic inflammatory disease. So if those are things that you are concerned about, it's definitely a good idea to go to your doctor, rule some of those things out. So if you do go to your doctor and you're worried about heavy blood flow and what to do and where to go from there, you definitely want to look at getting a blood test to see if you are anemic, see if your blood count is low or if your iron levels are low, because when you're losing that much blood every month, you might be anemic and therefore you're going to experience a lot of fatigue and things like that, and so that's an important thing to address. You can also test your thyroid levels with a blood test, and that can, help give some information as to the heavy blood flow. A pelvic exam would probably be a good thing to do with your doctor also, or even a uterine ultrasound, because these are things that are gonna help us look at like the endometriosis and the polyps or fibroids and things like that. So those are good things to check in with your doctor about and rule some not so good things out. So once we've ruled those things out and maybe we've determined that it's more due to the hormonal imbalance and things like that, what do? I like to test hormones using a test called the Dutch test. It's the dried urine test for comprehensive hormones. So it gives us a really broad, good overview of all of our hormones. So like estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, DHEA, melatonin, cortisol, and how these hormones are processing in our body and how our body is getting rid of these hormones. So it can give us a lot of information, and it can be difficult to know, like, okay, so you're having heavy bleeding and maybe you're having some breast tenderness and PMS and things like this. So we would assume that maybe there would be some estrogen dominance, but it's hard to know if your estrogen is too high, if your progesterone is too low, or both. Do we need to lower your estrogen, or do we just need to raise your progesterone? If your estrogen's already low but your progesterone's lower, we don't necessarily want to lower your estrogen, because then you're just gonna have other symptoms. So testing your hormones instead of guessing at what's going on can be really useful. And then there's also some supplements that research has suggested can be helpful for heavy bleeding. So one of those is making sure that you're getting enough vitamin A. Vitamin A deficiency can be a contributing factor to menorrhagia or heavy bleeding. And in one study, actually 92.5% of women noted improvement in their heavy bleeding symptoms. So one good way to get vitamin A from real whole foods is cod liver oil. So Rosita Real Foods is a really great brand of cod liver oil. Honestly, I think that's what this is, but there's no like branding on it. But I think that's what this is. I don't know, but I had this in my cupboard and it's almost gone. I need to get some more. Great source of vitamin A that our body can easily use and absorb. Another thing that might be useful is some B vitamins. So we need B vitamins to help our liver detoxify and get rid of excess hormones. And B vitamins are a really important process in that liver detoxification process. So I don't have any B vitamins at home right now, but when you're looking at your label of B vitamins, you want to look for methylcobalamin and methylfolate, because these methylated forms of vitamins are important because our body can use them more readily, and especially if you have issues with methylating, which is a whole nother subject, but when we kind of prepare it and put it in a form that the body can use easily, that's a good thing to look for. And then vitamin C. Vitamin C can help reduce heavy bleeding by helping to strengthen the capillaries and making them less fragile, so that you're going to have less bleeding when you do, release that uterine lining. And it can also help you absorb more iron if you're struggling with some anemia. So some vitamin C with bioflavonoids. This is the one that I have right now. There's a bazillion different kinds of vitamin C out there. Sometimes powdered forms can be more absorbable, more easily absorbed. I don't know. But I always like to make sure, though, at least that we have some bioflavonoids in there. And I take 4,000 milligrams a day. You can take 1,000 to 4,000. Some people will even dose up to 10,000. Our body gets rid of excess vitamin C that we don't need in our urine. So it's a pretty safe thing to highly dose. But I mean, if you're concerned about it, work with a practitioner or talk to your doctor or whatever. So that's all I got. If you are struggling with heavy bleeding, it can be a really frustrating thing. Like I said, this is something that I've dealt with for my whole life, and it's super frustrating and super embarrassing when you stand up from dinner with your family and you have blood all over the chair and all over your pants, and it's like, oh my god, how embarrassing. And we just hope that it doesn't happen in public or when we're at a place where we're not surrounded with people that love us and care about us, and it's a little bit more embarrassing there, and we can't wear the clothes that we want to wear, and we worry about ruining our outfits and our pants and things like that. So if you're struggling with this, I would love to just have a chat with you. Just doing a coaching call to figure out how this is affecting your life, what other things might be contributing, and what might be the next best step for you to get to the root of this. So I would love to hear below if this is something that you have struggled with before, if there's something that you've noticed that has helped you. Give me a comment below, or if you know somebody that struggles with this, share the video, share the love, and let's help other people feel better. So good to talk with you, and I'm sure we'll talk next Sunday. Goodbye.